I want you to repeat what you just said. You started from, I can't believe this took me so long. Our last session was, you were right on that edge of, I just want to go back. Everybody around me is dieting. Everybody at work, they're all on the, no, I don't eat this. And is it paleo? Do you know, the whole, you were saying that you had to order food for everybody at work, and everybody was telling you about their new diet and what they needed to do, of which you've done them all. I mean, you've done the paleo, you've done the ketogenic, you've done ketogenic, you've done all of the highly research, like mental heavy work on all that. Anyways, and this year is the first year that you were not participating.
Yes, and part of me is very high school. I felt left out. Gosh, everybody else is dieting, and I'm not dieting.
And they're going to get all that awesomeness. All of these people are going to reach heaven, and I'm going to stay down here in my lower piece of shit fat body.
Yeah, they're going to reach their goal, and they're going to brag about it, and their life's going to get so much better because they reached their weight loss goal.
Yeah. You remember when I said to you, you're delusional, because how do they feel right now when you go out and have a regular meal? You're like thinking that it's stuck. Can you see how it's totally not real?
Yeah, like I was saying after the last session, I realized how not real it was. I feel like I've been brainwashed for a very, very long time, that I've been believing something that's just so not true for so long. So I felt this, I really felt like I had a loss of time, that I really wasted a lot of time believing that. And thus, I was trying to create that better life with a smaller body, and I just created a worse life, no matter what size my body was, because I believed that.
Mm-hmm. And the belief comes with all those feelings and emotions that are so euphoric, right? I mean, when we were talking, we talked a lot about that last session. Like, we really did kind of delve into this illusion that those people are going to lose weight. They're going to be so proud, so in control, so like popular, or so like with it. And you're left to feel frumpy, and those emotions that we attach to it. That's what the symbolism is, right? And it feels like withdrawal. Like last week, you were having some withdrawal and laughing at yourself about it, because you're like, I just know I can't go back. I just know I can't do it. But I feel like I don't know what to do. You were in that stuck weird spot, right? Where there's the martyr role, right? Where I talk about there is a stage, and it is pretty close to the finish, where you start to feel, poor me. My life is going to be bad. It's horrible.
I'm being left behind,
It's a shitty place, and oftentimes the clients I work with project it onto me as if I'm the one who's holding them back. I'm the one who won't let them diet, when in reality that's not true. I often suggest people go back in just so they can get their bearings around where they're at, And or you go, if it's not projected onto me, the guide, it just is internalized as, I want my body. I want that thin body, and I want that illusion, right? And and it just makes you feel horrible. But anyways, once you kind of accept, which is where we've been pointed the whole time. Once you accept that you're never going to fix this, and this is the body, and you force yourself to open your eyes to look at that, those beliefs just go away, because it doesn't make sense to hold on to those or keep them internalized if it's impossible to reach or attain what those beliefs, what you've held so tight to those beliefs. It's not going to happen. And you also become aware of the abusiveness. And that's the other thing we went into so much. How abusive dieting really is. horrible. It really is horrible. I mean, what would you describe it? You've got all that education in psychology. What would you describe it? What type of abuse? I mean,
I would call it self-abuse. It's definitely self-abuse, and the hard part is it doesn't feel like abuse because you think you're going to get something wonderful at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you justify
yourself and you say, if I just did this dieting thing right, because there's people out there who say, I want to lose 20 pounds, and they do it. They lose 20 pounds and they reach their goal and they move on with their life.
Yeah. No, not really. They don't just move on. I mean, that's the belief.
People who really just truly lose 20 pounds, if they put on 20 pounds. People who don't have a problem with this.
Okay, I just have to tell you, you're assuming
it's
most people. I don't think you get it. You don't understand. You think most people.
I'm thinking of people like my husband. My husband who, honestly, my pants are too tight. I'm going to lose 20 pounds, and he did, and now he eats normal again, and he doesn't obsess about food.
Okay, that is rare.
It could be like...
He's 3%. He's only 3% of the 100.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, there's a very small percentage.
I focused on that small percentage and thought I could be one of those.
Yeah,
I really focused on that.
Yeah, that's cognitive distortion. That's what that is. But that's also how the diet industry markets, right? They make everything. Right. That's how they do it. It's so easy, and I lost the weight, and now I move on with my life, and now I'm having so much fun, and I get to enjoy everything like the skinny people enjoy, and that's not true. For 97%, right. I mean, we're talking 97%. That's a huge percentile. If we look at it as, if we were statisticians, do you realize that 97%, that's not how it's for, and that 97% get fatter, so you're gambling with fatter. Not thinner and happier.
Yeah, and that's a good word. It's gambling. I'm looking at the odds, like really, really bad odds. Of those 3% people.
And gambling with, I mean, consider what you're gambling with. When you negotiate to overeat, don't forget that gambling doesn't occur when you are dieting. It actually occurs when you choose to diet right before you overeat. Yeah, when you say, fuck it, I'm going to just eat this, you say, and I'm going to lose it, and you're gambling with that to negotiate for your consumption. So that's why people who diet gain more weight. Not only is it biological and hormonal, I mean, you're basically telling your body that we're under famine. We're under not a good environment, not a healthy environment, and the brain inflames. And the thyroid and the adrenals adjust accordingly. They adapt. So as soon as you say, I can't eat, and you reduce the pleasure in food reduction is a big trigger, right? So if you don't get adequate pleasurable food, your metabolic system turns down. So not only do you physiologically make yourself highly sensitive to storing fat, because that's how the body works. It's supposed to do that. It's not a bad thing. But you're psychologically and emotionally positioning yourself to feel impulses to want to eat more. Add those two together, and what do you get? 97% of everybody who diets gets fatter. And that's what you're gambling with, because the diet industry, which is it's capitalism, people. This is the downside of it. It's not that they're all bad, but this is the downside, is you get these businesses who are trying to make money off of you, and they tell you that they can give you this illusion. They're selling a lie. It's a freaking lie, right? They can sell you weight loss. So if we look at just, for example, the food dieting, Jenny Craig's, right? Where they just sell food. They're just selling food. And we talked about this. All they're selling is food. So they're just like an online, it's like a grocery store. And they're selling you itty bits amount of food for a lot of money. So they've tricked you into spending a lot of money on very little food, because they sell the illusion of you're going to be happier. And not only that, but they've distorted the concept of health. The diet industry has distorted the concept of health into thinness, as if thinness is healthier, and that's not necessarily true, right? Health is not about how little and how much body fat you have. That's just like one piece of information. Yeah, that's not even, it's just like one piece of the puzzle, which is a very big puzzle, right? And it's a consequential piece of the puzzle. It's like a secondary piece of the puzzle, not a primary. It's an indication of something. It's kind of like your heart rate. Your heart rate is an indication of something. It's not, it's a sign of an issue maybe with oxygen, you know, and your vascular system. So you get my point. So they're selling this itty bitty amount of food and you buy it because you're not buying the food, you're buying the illusion of weight loss. So right now we have Oprah Winfrey, who supposedly is a guru, because of association. She just associates herself with people like Wayne Dyer and Louise, whatever his name is, and you know, all of those people who are really talking about grace and, you know, consciousness. Anyways, she associates herself with them. She buys into Weight Watchers. She's now part of its ownership, and she's making so much money on it, and she's using the illusion of get your best body as if she's going to finally reach her goals because now I'm ownership of this company. Because I'm amazing. She's using it to make more money. And I don't know. It's a sign that she's nowhere close to the people she associates with. So yeah, you got to look at the cognitive distortion when you say, I just thought it'd be like him. Well, that's because that's what you're sold. That's what you're sold. So we see this in the media a ton because that's how they sell things. I'm like, for example, when I wrote Weight Loss Apocalypse, a lot of people went into it and assumed if I eat to hunger, everything is good. That's not necessarily what I wrote. I didn't even go into detail. That was just a conversation, right? I described it in there. This is just a beginning of a conversation. We need to talk more about this. Here's the science of hunger. Here's the science of this. You eat to hunger, and I talked about it shouldn't be about your weight. That right there is a big discussion I did not go into. Right? So someone who distorts reality will say, I'm going to eat to hunger and I'm going to lose a ton of weight. Oh my God, it's going to be so easy to eat to hunger because all I do is listen to my body and I eat to hunger and I'm like, all good. Not necessarily true.
Eating to hunger is kind of like the first step. The first step is just breaking yourself of some horrible habits that I've created over years and years.
Yeah, well, and it's not necessarily going to work if you have the desire to lose weight because it's not aggressive enough. It's not starving enough. It's not abusive enough. If that makes sense. You need something more abusive.
It's not. You're right. Diet is a restrictive abuse.
Thank you. It's abusive, which brings us full circle to where we were. So yeah, dieting is incredibly abusive. And we've talked about, that Stockholm syndrome or that, battered wife syndrome, but I call it body image syndrome, where you justify and reason and rationalize abusive behavior and distort everything because of the illusion of a better life if you're thinner. And it's not a real betterment, right? We could say someone who is like 200, 300 pounds will have there is a physical difference. However, it's a physical difference. And if you look at, for example, people who get weight loss surgery, gastric bypass, their statistics don't look so hot because of the issues in their brain, and they lose the weight, and they still have fear of regaining it. The pressure around it, they still feel withheld from food. They still have desire to eat. They still want to be a part of society. So how do you make it all work, right? So the I think the hardest thing is getting rid of the illusion. Not just seeing it, right? Because part of what we had to do with that last session too is like, okay, well, you can go back into that, but we had to expose, but it's abusive. Your coworkers are right now living in an abusive environment, and they reason and rationalize that it's a good thing because of what they believe health to be, what they believe it's going to do for their sense of worth, what it's going to do for their sense of need for control. Like, they're doing this only because of some carrot they're reaching for, not because it's something that they would suggest to anybody. Right? And so we have to kind of open our eyes to the abusiveness of that environment, and then see that what they're selling is a lie. It's a lie. It's not true. Right?
And you know what? Dieting is perceived as discipline. So I think people put a very positive spin on dieting because they say, oh, you're disciplining what you eat, you're disciplining what you put in your body, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's ego. That's like saying, oh, you have a quality, you're different, that's special. That, you know,
and you're special because you can diet.
Yeah, that is anorexia to a T. No, I mean, it is.
I just laugh because it's like, why have I been so blind? Because there's other things where 97% of the population, I'll go, why does everybody believe that? It's just so obvious that that's so wrong. But why have I been so blind to this?
Because this is your idol. This is what you believe. And it's very, remember when we talked about narcissism?
Oh my God.
I was like, hey, I hate to break it to you, dearie, but there's narcissism in here. This idea that right? And it's, again, it's understandable when you don't feel, you don't get it, you don't have a sense of your internal worth. You know, I recall coming out of this in so much shock and awe, right? Because I didn't have any help. It was just me, and I came out of it. I was 20 years old, and I didn't know how to describe it, but there was so much shock and awe that I was 20 years old and never before, well, not since I was like in the single digit ages, like 4 years old, 3 years old, do I recall feeling authentic. That word, how do you describe it? You know, feeling like I was connected, right, to the earth and to a life, and and my thoughts were real in terms of like, I was creating this play, this game, and it was mine, and I didn't care about what people thought. It was 4 years old was probably the last time I actually felt freedom, right? And you forget. And it's like when I came out of that and I felt that shock and awe of recovery, which I'm assuming you feel right now. Are you feeling that right now? That holy shit.
God. I couldn't wait to talk to you. I really couldn't.
Oh my God. This is huge.
These feelings.
Well, it's amazing. And I remember turning around going, I was so close to putting a gun to my head. For that. Oh my God, it brings me to tears. Just horrible. Like, and we justify and reason and rationalize, and people are going, oh my God, you are so hot. Look at your body. And they don't have any idea, how it affected me in terms of feeling like that's all I have. Oh my God, great. I got to keep it. It was just horrible. And clearly I had trauma. I did have trauma. I had those triggers that created that fight or flight, and it was furious for me. A furious sense of fight or flight. You could say yours was furious, but not necessarily triggered by trauma? Or was it? You did say you had some college experience that affected you. Do you think that this really comes down to that moment, or was it just the incredible desire to be wanted and loved by your parents, which may have been the original trauma?
I think I wanted to, I just remember putting on weight after being molested, but then people, they put you down for being heavy. So then it turned into, I want to be accepted by other people, and in order to do that, I need to be thin.
Yeah, and you were...
So I think it snowballed into other things.
Yeah, so it just transferred your coping mechanism. So I think it's a common coping mechanism, and it doesn't necessarily have to require molestation. The percentage of clients I work with who are actually molested is very low. Yeah.
I just know that's when I mean, up to the age of 6, I was normal kid. I was, loved my body, and I just remember being really, really happy. Mm-hmm. And then that happened to me, and I think I started eating as coping or comfort.
Yeah, didn't know what to do.
When my body changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't know what to do, and you're probably there was stress, right? Remember when I said it starts with inflammation in the brain, fear inflames the brain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you might not have had an eating issue. It might have just been the physiological reaction to stress. And children can cope amazingly. Right. You can cope, and a lot of children don't necessarily know molestation is wrong. They just feel that it's wrong, and they don't know how to talk about it, and they don't realize, and a lot of trauma doesn't come back until later in the life, when you're like, holy crap, and then there's judgment and fear and anxiety, in junior high, when you're like, oh my God, that happened to me, and it becomes a story. But anyways, that's a totally different conversation. So in this whole process, do you see too that you have to get rid of it's like getting rid of your story that you've had this whole time. My story is that I'm going to lose weight. My story is I was molested. My story is that this and this and that. And
you're so right.
And you have to let your story go.
I was talking with a psychologist last night, and we were talking about like a different type of therapy that's, like kind of different. Because the psychologist was saying, she goes, yeah, our tactic is, and she's not very proud of it. She's like, we're very nurturing because we want you to keep coming back.
Yeah, that is enabling. Said, You're an enabler. That's the diet industry. Yeah, the diet industry is really nurturing too.
Yeah, like, keep coming back, we'll take care of you. And I told her, I said, my story was so good, and my story was so valid, and it made all my behavior valid. And I remember this one man at the seminar said, oh, someone hurt your feelings and because you were fat, and then you just created a story from that. And I was so angry at him, but he was so right.
Yeah.
He was so right.
Well, you do. Well, but it's a coping mechanism. It's not that you know what you're doing. It's not like you're like, yeah, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use it against everybody. I'm going to use it as an excuse. Usually when I talk to people, you're not the only one here, dearie, that does that. I think we all do it. And when you position yourself as a victim, I think this is an important thing to discuss. When you position yourself as a victim from reality victim, someone takes advantage of you, someone objectifies you, someone really does put you in a position, and you don't know how to stop, you don't know how to control it, you don't know how to do that. The recovery requires that you not take the victim, that you don't position yourself that way. You have to be the observer. You have to recognize the compassion part of recovery. Any addict recoverer, anybody who's listening who's been an addict of some sort, behavioral addiction, substance addiction, whatever it is, recovery does require you surrender some of the positionality behind it. If you're going to constantly say, this was done to me, you're always going to cope. So if you want to let go of your coping mechanism, if you don't want to have to cope, you really have to change your story. Doesn't mean you change your history. A lot of, some people would say, but you're diminishing it. You're making it, you're like trying to unvalidate this. Actually, that's true.
Right, yeah, like,
I hate to break it to you,
why is that a bad thing?
Well, I would agree, because we're supposed to be feeling sorry for you. Now, that means that I think you're weak. In essence, when I feel sorry for you, I feel you're weak, you're incapable, that was hard, you couldn't handle it. That's the unconscious message. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other side, just because I'm saying, you need to recontextualize the story. You need to let go of that story, and you need to look at this differently. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that, you're weak too. I'm just saying if you don't like the consequences of how you coped, then you're going to have to go back and recope or recontextualize, maybe in a way that you understand today. As a child, you don't understand. You don't understand the person.
Right.
We just naturally put ourselves below others because that's just how I think kids are raised in general, to be like, you have to listen. You are a subordinate, right? You are lesser.
Yeah.
So you learn to condition yourself as a lesser human. So if someone has the confidence and the ego to hurt you, the first thing you do is internalize it as, I must have done something wrong, or I must be this or that, or I must, whatever it is. As a kid, I know I did.
Right.
And you don't necessarily go, that guy has problems. This person has personal issues, right? This person has issues with their own identity around sex, and they're afraid, and you don't know the whole story. So you're just positioning yourself as someone who had this horrible thing happen, because that when people talk about molestation or rape or sexual, assault, they have the worst case scenario in their head.
Yeah.
And not only that, but they're projecting how they would feel as an adult, right?
Right.
So then you're taught it's horrible and traumatic and, oh my God, poor thing. And if you go into reality, actually I was really confused and it was disorienting and I didn't know what was going on. And I left there just feeling like someone that was like, I didn't have any control. So I didn't know what was going on. I was doing something or forced to do something. I don't even know what it was, but I don't like feeling forced to do anything. It's more about the force. Yeah. Like, I don't want to have to do I don't know what this is. Am I doing it? You don't have any of those boundaries yet. So you don't necessarily have the trauma other than I'm being forced. There's no control, right? So the feeling out of control and being forced makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel like you can't, like other people have power over you. And so I think the need to find control through weight loss is a way to feel reoriented. I know that was what it was for me. So I can't speak for everybody.
But it's definitely the control. Yeah, I was very angry after the last session. Not angry, but I said I've lost my coping mechanism to feel that I'm in control. I even was aware that I'm not in control, but the dieting made me feel I was in control of something.
Yeah, well, yeah, because of the illusion. That the illusion of being thin would make your life like a J. Crew magazine.
Yeah.
Whatever the media portrays, which is clean and pure and organized and with it, and I'm like precise, right? There's this very, very, it's the same way, and I said this in our last session, that's a religious zealot feels about their religion. They have the same sense of purity, same sense of cleanliness and order and protection, and the difference is that what you believe you put on a pedestal. So there's the ego involved. So that ego is what makes you not see the issues, right? Because this makes you a better person. Being thinner means there's meaning behind it. It means that I have willpower. It means that I have work ethic, right? And the problem with that illusion is that the opposite. So if you don't diet properly, it makes you feel the same trauma. I know for me, that's what it was like because it was pretty horrific. But my trauma came from my shame and judgment of the sexual experience, that I was supposed to be this religious, pure person when I got married, right? That I was going to be clean and pure for the person, right? And so if I had premarital sex, that was horrible. But this one specific experience entailed multiple men, of which I did not invite, right? And I felt the shame and judgment that I would have judged someone else in that position without knowledge, right? With ignorance. So I was judging myself with the ignorance of the religion, right? So the actual experience wasn't as horrific as my fantasy of religion was. That caused more drama and more insanity. The shame relative to the religious ego is what caused my trauma. On top of the fact that these 19-year-old boys, right, were afraid of the fact that they thought I was going to be excited to do this group thing, and I wasn't. I was crying and upset, and they didn't know how to react because they're so macho. And how do you think they responded? To mock and shame me.
Yeah.
So I was socially made to feel like a horrible, bad person because they were embarrassed. Anyways, and I felt like the worst person on the planet. So take into account those feelings. So I do have a point with this here. So what I did is I took those feelings of shame and horror, and it felt disorienting. It felt like my life was shattered. I literally shattered. Worse than I was already shattered, because I was pretty shattered prior to, just because I was drinking alcohol and I was having premarital sex and I was living an evil life, or a life that was, off the path.
Yeah.
So I already had shame about myself. But this really shattered it. So this created a focal point for me to make change. Right? I can't do this anymore. I have to change. I need to get back on this path of whatever it is, right? So you can see how something like that was a tipping point for me to say, you know what? I need to get back in control. I don't want to feel disoriented. I remember so clearly how it felt. I felt super unorganized. I felt like I had no power, no control, easily manipulated. Okay, so those emotions created a coping mechanism, which was to try to rein it in, right? To not feel disoriented, to not feel out of control, to not feel easily manipulated. I just wanted to feel crisp, clean, in order. I mean, think about those emotions and how they played together. And my first cope to get rid of those emotions, because those emotions did not feel good and they were disorienting. I didn't know where they came from. I wasn't aware at the time that it came from my religious belief system relative to that experience. I wasn't conscious about it. I just had this horrible shame and sense of loss, right? So I coped, and
it was your own belief system that drove your self-judgment.
Correct. That drove how disoriented I was. That drove my reaction to that experience, right?
Yeah.
So if I had my wits today in that experience, I'd have been like, you guys should just go screw yourself. Not cool. Don't ever put a woman in this. I would have been so much different.
Right.
I would have been very, very confident, like, screw you guys. But I didn't have my sense. I didn't have that. I just had religion. How is religion going to save you in that environment when it's not yours? It's out here, right? This is forced on you. It's like a external system that does not work in reality. You have to isolate yourself from reality for it to work, right?
Yeah.
So I get put in reality and it doesn't work. It's like, yeah, that system works when you're in isolation. It doesn't work when you're in reality. And I don't even know how to work in reality now. But I know how to work in a system that's isolated, right? So it's like a diet. Similar to a diet. A diet does not work in reality. It's like only works in isolation. So religion is like spiritual dieting, right? Spiritual dieting. That's what religion is, people. So well, I'm not going to do, not all religion. Religions that are used to control you, to keep you safe. Anyways, I digress. I'm going to go back to this scenario because I think many people will connect with this. They might not connect with the religion and the the sexual assault and the prior experience I had with rape and the all these things that kind of came up to this. But I got to that point where it was like, I'm done. I'm fixing this. I'm no longer going to just stuff down my shame and I suck, because I'll fix this later. Someday I'll go back into the church, right? Someday I'll fix that. That was what I was doing prior to. Right? Remember the diet religious concept? I was off of my diet religious concept. And that's how I was coping. I was like, I want to be in the real world. And I don't have to feel bad about this, even though I did feel bad. But there was some grace there. But as soon as this happened, it was like, oh, I'm now one of those people. I'm a serious piece of shit. And I felt disoriented. And the first thing I thought, I remember there was a couple weeks of me just feeling dark and horrible. And I couldn't talk about it because I felt so bad about myself. And then I went home for Christmas break, and my parents were like, what's wrong? And I was like, nothing, I'm just, it was just horrible. And then I came back and I went back for the second semester, and I thought, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm done. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to party. I'm not going to socialize. So I isolated myself. Okay. And I'm just going to lose. I want to lose this 15 pounds, 20 pounds. It was actually 30 pounds that I had gained, primarily because I was competing in track at the time, and I was huge. I was freaking muscle. But anyways, so I felt like I needed to get in control. So what I did is I took all of that dark, disoriented emotion, and I made losing weight the first solution. So all of that energy went into controlling my food because I needed to be thin. So the food was kind of like the wormhole to this side, the dark side to the light side. The dieting was the wormhole between the two. If I can control my food, then I will be thinner. I will walk through campus in my pressed clothes and my white shirt, and my room will be clean, and I'm gonna have smelly candles, and the whole thing is gonna be perfect. You relate to that?
Yeah.
I know. That's why I'm like, the story, actually, people are gonna get this. And that's what dieting,
because you want the world to see you as together. You've got it together.
Yeah, and there are some fabulous capital geniuses out there who are selling that. They are like, we could sell something in here. Oh, we're going to sell the diet. We're going to sell the smelly candle. We're going to sell the cleaning supplies, right? At this time, we're going to sell everything to make you feel organized, clean with it. It's that bipolar kind of, but you could have probably diagnosed me with being bipolar at that moment. Maybe a little schizophrenia, a lot of anxiety. I probably had all sorts of labels. If you saw my brain, if you could do scans of that brain at that moment, it was probably a horror story because I was compensating so tightly for all this trauma and depriving my food because I had the illusion that being thin, I would be so, with it. I'm a better athlete when I'm thinner. People like me when I'm thinner. I'm going to be super organized. I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to get the best grades, right? I'm going to be studying. I'm going to be that girl. Anyway, so what happens then, if that was my way to cope, what happened the moment I ate off my rigid diet? What do you think it felt like?
You lost your coping mechanism.
So what did it feel like?
Really shitty.
Yeah, and really worse. And worse. Loss. Not just disorientation and dark and shame, but it felt like I suck too. Oh, I suck again.
Yeah.
And
now I can't even cope.
Yeah, and I want it back. So it's not even, but I didn't even know I can't cope because I didn't know I was coping. But it was like this. I ate off. I suck. I'm horrible. All these feelings started coming back in. I felt like I was getting fat immediately. That psychosomatic sense of, oh my God. And then I started to binge because that immediately got rid of those feelings. It was like, I got to get rid of these feelings. So I would start to do anything to get rid of those feelings. So I would binge and purge, right? I screwed it. I might as well get stuff in. I'll eat a couple more bowls of cereal, and then I would puke it up. And then I would feel like, okay, I'm back to my safety. I'm back to my perfect cleanliness, order, purity, back to like I've got my shit together, that type of feeling. And within 18 months, honey, it was nasty. It was like binging and purging, 8 to 12 times a day. Then I had all this excessive exercise. I had to sit on a Versa climber for an hour and a half, or, even just the Stairmaster for over an hour at like level 10, burning over 1,000 calories on top of all of that. I mean, it became That illusion that you just let go of, that's what I was chasing. But it came from trying to get rid of these horrible feelings. So if you're coming from a base or a foundation of horror, your coping mechanism is going to be pretty stringent. Right? Which it's understandable, why it's so difficult, why it's so hard, and why it's so hard to let go of that illusion, right? Because if that's what you believe, if you feel that, I just want to feel control and light and free, if you believe that losing weight's going to do that for you and you internalize that, in order to get rid of it, you'd have to feel that shame again and say, I'm not going to try to escape it. I have to go back to these original emotions of failure, inadequacy, lacking, stupid, ugly, dumb, have nothing to provide. I'm a burden on other people. Those are the things that I felt. Right? And I have to actually...
Like most of us feel that,
yeah. And I have to go in there and I actually need to look at those emotions and almost have an exorcism with them. Like those are not me. They're the feelings I had because I used this system to determine my worth. I used intelligence. I used, my body image. I used religion was a huge one for me because that was clearly how my parents coped. Right? Mm-hmm. That was their coping mechanism. So I can love them and totally understand what they were doing. Telling you, right. I came out of that and it was like shock and awe. And now I can just tell people with it. It's like there was an incredible amount of knowledge that came to me in that moment. It was insane awareness. Now, let's go into yours. Let's talk about you. How do you feel right now? Describe how it feels.
I just have a smile on my face, and it's because this is the relief I was looking for. Mm-hmm. I really thought that dieting and losing weight would provide that relief.
Yeah, but through
all that pain and suffering.
Yeah, well, you're holding on to the pain and suffering. That was the problem. You held on to the pain and suffering and then coped. So you have both. Pain and suffering and your coping mechanism. So we let go of your coping mechanism, and the other side has to go.
Right. I mean, I know deep down this is what I really, really wanted. The relief from the thoughts, the relief from that belief system. I really thought thinness would give me that relief, and I was so wrong.
No, because relief comes from re-looking at, am I a bad person, right? You had to go there. If you're not going to cope, you have to look at these emotions and question them. I like to think of it as like you've been turned around running away, and for the first time you didn't run away and you turned around and went towards those emotions and said, that's not true. I shouldn't feel bad about this. I shouldn't feel bad about that. I haven't done anything wrong. And you start to unravel through grace. Right? You give yourself grace. You give the whole thing grace, right? And compassion and all the people involved. You start to go, oh, they didn't know what they were doing. And oh my God, they were coping. This was their coping mechanism. And I just happened to be an easy target. Right? Children are easy for people who use sex as a coping mechanism because they assume they're negotiating. They won't remember. They won't know what's going on. Right? That's their coping. Right. They have the same feelings that you just did. But their way of feeling better was the illusion of I'm cool because I'm sexual, right? That's a very different view of someone's, what makes them a worthy human being, right? Anyway, so you can look at...
I'm in awe right now, or I'm just sort of dumbfounded because we're all so much the same, like addicts and people who just go to extremes. We're all really the same, and we're all struggling with the same feeling.
Yeah, it is. It's all very, very, and that is something I recall clearly from when I recovered, is the witnessing of like, oh my God, we are all the same. And at the time, I didn't really put this together because I didn't know how, and I was just like, I don't know what happened, but I'm out, and oh my God, I can't even believe it. And I remember thinking, I want to talk to people about this, but I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Right? So the good thing about doing this as an adult is you know what to say now. Like you can say, oh yeah, survival. Let's talk about survival, because what you're describing and what we're talking about is people who are in those lower states of survival. They're not surviving well, and they're trying to survive. They create an idea of why they're not surviving well. They go into fight or flight, and they think what's going to get rid of that fight or flight is something that's been sold to them. And it is sold. Do you see that? It's capitalism selling this concept of peace, satisfaction, calm, relaxation. Yeah. They're selling the other side. They give the illusion that this is what's going to get you to the other side, where you're confident in your survival. You make more money. That's what's going to do it for you. Buy a bigger house. That's what's going to make you feel safe. Get married and have kids, and then you'll feel better. You know, you need to have a career and be at the top of your career. There's an illusion of perfectionism involved here, right? That if you can perfect something, and we'll sell it to you, if you can perfect nutrition, you know, nutrition is your way to get there. So we're going to organize what you eat. And when you do that, the other side just opens up, and you're now on the other side. Now, do you feel that? It's like, holy shit, what it feels like to not be in fight or flight is kind of cool. It feels amazing.
Oh my God, it feels so good, but at the same time, it's humbling. It's like this. It's a real calm, but it's just inside. Like It's not one of those people telling everybody, I feel awesome.
No.
You got to feel this way too.
No.
It's not that.
No. Oh my God. Yes, we're correct. It's very
true inner beauty.
Yes, that's what it is. Remember when I said I came out of it and I was so disoriented and the shock and awe. And I remember walking through campus and being like, I can't believe how much love I'm feeling for these people I would have easily judged before. I feel so much love and compassion. It wasn't this better than.
You nailed it.
It's amazing.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Last night I had an experience. I was, this woman's been drawn to me. I mean, I always thought she was nice, but she's somehow drawn to me, and I think I'm giving off some sort of energy. And she admitted her alcoholism to me and, just was really vulnerable in front of me and told me all these dark feelings she's having and even some dark feelings towards me. And I felt nothing but understanding and compassion. And I can tell you 2 weeks ago, I would have judged her.
Mm-hmm. And been defensive or, yeah. And,
yeah, I would have been like, how dare you feel that way about me? And I just understood.
Yeah, well, the alcohol is what makes her feel, that's just her medicine. That's how she feels.
Right, it's the same. Yeah, she's no different from me.
Okay.
She's no different from me.
You got it. In our medicine was to organize our food, make ourselves feel pure, and lose weight. What's the difference? What's the difference, really? Hers just has a social impact, right? Yours was... Yes. And they both have physical impact. So the dieting and the binging has a major impact. So it's not anyways, so she would have to do the same thing you just did, which is to stop coping and force herself to look at those original emotions and redefine her fucking story. You need to retell the story, dearie. So many people get pissed when I say that.
Yeah.
You're making it look like it did.
Here's what I've been going through.
Yeah.
With her, and it just made her cry. I mean, we just sat in my car, and she just cried, and I went, wow, last session, I thought I was so broken. I really thought I was so broken, and that the road ahead of me would be so far. No,
do you remember me saying, oh, you're right there. You're right there. You're right there. Just sit in it and contemplate. All I said was contemplate. Just go there.
Yeah.
Just look at it. Never going to lose weight again. Let it go. And what happens is this door opens. You don't even know it's there. You don't even know what you're going to get on the other side of that. It just opens up, doesn't it? As soon as you
wake up.
And I cannot sit here and be like, and you're going to do this and that and this and that's what's going to happen and woo. No. It is a surrendering. There is a white flag. The humility is what got you there. So it doesn't come after. What you need to see is that what it took is an incredible amount of humility to let this go. That I am done. The coping mechanism was all you saw. And it was all you wanted. And it was the only thing you could see, right? And as soon as you decided I will be fat permanently, right? The coping mechanism had no value and it went away. And what happened to your vision? All of a sudden, there's so much more. And it just happens. It's not like we forced this. It's not like I said, we're going to go through step by step, and you're going to earn it, and you're going to learn it. No, there isn't even a learning to this. It's just an awareness.
Oh. Yeah, it's an awareness. And after last session, I said, oh, God, I'll never get there. But then I did sit in it. I sat in it, and I was vulnerable.
Yeah. Did it feel like you were going to...
And I can't tell you, I called a friend, and I cried, and just sort of was rambling. I can't remember what he said, but I can just remember feeling, I must be drawn to him because he has some sort of inner peace too. And just feeling like, oh, I'll get there. I'll get there.
Yeah, and you just said, and whatever there is, I'm open to it.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, you wake up the next morning, and you're like, I just feel different. There's something different. This doesn't feel the same.
Like life slowed down. You know that good feeling when you know you're going on vacation and you're just calm the fuck down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. It felt like I've got time. I did not feel pressure anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, and I want you to now look back what you are experiencing and how you've been the last 48 hours, whatever that time was. We talked Thursday night. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days. Would you surrender what you have now to be thin?
No.
It's like, why would you do that?
No.
Right? Do you see how that would be like, why would anybody do that? That is like going back into jail. That's like going back into a cage to do that, you would have to close up your mind again.
That would just be, no, because now I recognize this is what I truly wanted. This is the feeling I truly wanted and the humility that I wanted. And just like you said, you walked out on the campus and you loved and had compassion for people. I really wanted that.
Yeah, well, you have to do it for yourself first. And that's what you did. You actually gave yourself compassion from having to cope and understanding all. It's like you just kind of gave yourself a do-over. Your story is now beginning, actually, if you think of it that way.
It is. It really is. I'm about to cry because it's that relief cry.
Mm-hmm. The shock and awe of, I can't believe it.
Yeah, I never thought I would feel this way. Honestly. I never thought I would have that compassion and love for myself, too.
Well, if you can get rid of the need to be thin after you gain a bunch of weight, and you can have compassion for that and forgiveness for that, because that was a pretty horrible belief system, right?
Yeah.
It's like that now you know what it feels like, right? You could have said before, I heard what compassion was. I heard what forgiveness was, but oh no, this is different. This is real. This comes from this level of humility for all, not just myself, but mankind, humankind of all degrees. Like, we're all the same. There's an awareness in that. Holy shit, I'm no different. We're all the same. this whole game of I'm better than is such an illusion. It's a coping mechanism.
And that's what felt so, it felt so good. I mean, this woman last night, I mean, I just know I would have judged her in the past. And the fact that wasn't even a thought in my head. All I said to her was, we're the same. We're the same. It's the same thing. It's the same feeling.
Yeah. You just have to go backwards, like look around and recognize that you don't want your story. You have to get rid of the story, right? And all of a sudden, but in order for you to do that, you literally have to shut every single escape route. Every single one. And it feels like you're going to die. You actually had to have sat through a major sense of death. Do you recall those feelings at all?
Yeah.
Did you or not?
I know those feelings. The last Thursday.
Feels like you're going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because your fight or flight mechanism is on fire. That's what we're talking about. This is really cool when you look at, the brain. It's like, this is a real ancient mechanism that you fired up. And you thought that getting thinner and depriving food was going to turn it down. It's very simple.
Am I just making it worse?
You got it. And it's a vicious looping. And it's obsessive compulsive, right? That's symptomatic. You could say it's very perfectionism, which is symptomatic. Type A, symptomatic of someone who's got that fight or flight activation. And you were tired of trying to fix it going in circles. So I said, stop trying to fix it. And guess what happens? It gets bigger in your head. It gets bigger. You feel worse. And then it just dissolves on its own. Like it's almost like a click, right? Like this, I'm not going to fix this. I'm not turning around. I'm not going to do anything about it. And there's this moment you feel, and it's like this surrendering. It's like you go limp to it. You don't fight it. You just let it be there. And you come out of that a totally different conscious person. And you don't do it for the consciousness. You do it for relief. It's like surrender. I just surrender. I'm not.
Oh my God, but it's surrender. It's relief. It just felt like when you run and you can't run anymore and you just
give up.
You can enjoy that sitting down on the grass. You just, it's just the very simple and very humble, quiet place.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people.
Something that we don't get to experience very much.
A lot of people call this an awakening, a shift in consciousness. The person that I find the most intriguing. I gotta go. I've got another client I need to call. But Dr. David R. Hawkins. Dr. David R. Hawkins' work to me blows my mind. He is by far the most articulate at explaining this. Not in terms of survival mechanisms in the brain. He probably could if he was still alive today. If someone just, said, could it be this? But ultimately, that has, the mental knowledge of what it is has no bearing on the fact that what it takes is this insane amount of humility and willingness to die. Because that's what it feels like. You've got to be willing to die. Because your brain's on fire and it's saying you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And you just can't respond to it anymore. And that takes so much humility to let go of your coping and to let go of the idea that you have to fix these things to make it go away, that you have to let go of a lot of deep-rooted belief systems to say, I can't do it anymore, and I'm white flag. The white flag is up, and I'm taking my armor off, and I'm not going to do anything about it. And the act of that alone is what opens the door. Yeah. All right, I got to go, my dear.
It seems so easy. Okay.
It is easy. It is easy. It feels horrific, though.
Yeah.
But you're like, that was it?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's how I literally had shock and awe after going, I can't, oh my God, and the knowledge and the brain and there was this awareness and this incredible amount of capacity that I opened my life up to, And once you become aware, you'll go back and forth in different areas where something will bring you back to that weird human nature, and you'll be like, that was funny. I'm not even going to respond to it. Or you make, it's an incredible experience, and I'm very excited for you that you did it, right?
Thank you.
Okay, so when can I talk to you again? When do you want to follow up here?
If we could do another evening, because I had today off.